We're here. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages? How we doing? Lot to talk about today, right? Jimmy Garoppolo came back. What's up, Debbie? How you feeling? Number one in the room. How's it going? Everybody, hit that like button on your way in. We got some stuff to talk about today. The return of Jimmy Garoppolo. Some new numbers. Some new numbers on these players. That's pretty cool. Trey Sermon news. Oh man. And then the John Lynch and not John. Yeah, John Lynch and Adam Peters. They addressed the media. They didn't have a press conference. A little shaded that they didn't talk to the, do like a live press conference, but whatever. I get it. They got to do what they got to do. But Dave Lombardi, he recorded the video. I went and watched it on his YouTube. So it was good to see. And we're going to get into all of that right now. So today, Jimmy Garoppolo returned to practice. That's the big story of the day. And honestly, I kind of stole the headline, right? Is Jimmy Garoppolo was back in practice. This was the first time he was actually on the field. And, all off season in training camp and everything, he was off to the side field, throwing, rehabbing. And this time, he was actually back on the field. It was a little weird to see him out there with Trey Lance, a little bit. They're both taking snaps. You got Brock Purdy out there. They're doing their thing. When I first saw the videos, I was like, a little different. But, I mean, it's just going to take a little bit of time to get used to. That's what it is. It is what it is, right? So they talk to the media, and I want to get into that as well. But I don't know. What do you guys think about Jimmy Garoppolo coming back to the team? Trey Lance, so he talked about it today. He was very excited. He said there's nothing but respect for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's like a brother to him. He's happy to have him back. These are the things that Trey Lance said. So let's get to all the quotes, the important quotes that Trey Lance said. So Trey was really good with the media. They asked him it was like 6-7 minute press conference, and they literally asked him only about Jimmy Garoppolo, man. It was crazy. Like the media only wanted to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo when Jimmy was there and when Trey was there. So it was like, okay, here's Trey Lance. Here we go. Well, maybe you're going to ask him about something else. Now they asked him about Jimmy Garoppolo, and Trey Lance said, he's like a big brother to me. Since the first day in the league, he's got my back. I got his back. So you could tell that they're boys. They're friends, man. There's no animosity. And then Trey says, our goal is to have the best quarterback room in the league. He says, Jimmy's going to be a huge resource to me, as he has been since draft day. He said they texted each other, that he's been talking to Jimmy, and things like that. And he says it felt super normal to have Jimmy Garoppolo back on the practice field. He's a great dude to be around. And I think that was the big takeaway is there's no awkwardness, and I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a weird situation. It was going to be an awkward situation, but it hasn't been, it's just two guys. They're friends. This is the job. The tables are turned. Last year, Trey Lance was QB2. This year, he's QB1. So he was like smiling every time Jimmy was out there. They asked him about Jimmy. He said he was smiling. And it's okay to have two quarterbacks on this team. And I think Jimmy's just going to be there to be a mentor. And that's what Trey said. He says he's really going to lean on him, ask him for guidance. And that's basically the big takeaway, is they are not going to breathe down each other's neck. They're not going to hate each other. These guys are respectable to each other. They're friends. And that's what what it's all about. Trey says we talked at his locker. It's all love. Nothing's changed. It's all love. So I don't know. I know a lot of people are upset about the whole situation. There's still a lot of people that are weirded out by this. But you know what? The way that this is what I got to say. Trey Lance handled this so well, man. He is so professional. Like the guy's 22 years old. And he's handling this better than a lot of grown-ass men and women out there. A lot of adults. Trey Lance is handling it better than some of the adults that I know. He's 22 years old, man. And he's handling this so good. That speaks volumes of Trey Lance. Of how he's handling this so very well. Right? It's crazy because the media is trying to stir this up. Like we said, they're trying to create a chaos, create a story, create some tension. And there really isn't any. And it's because this locker room is a family. There's one goal, and that goal is to win a Super Bowl, regardless of who's on the team. doesn't matter who's on the team. These guys want to go out there and play and win championships. Whoever's going to be on the team, they're going to support. You know, I love Trey Lance, man. He's so confident. He's humble. He's hungry, and he just wants to go out there and prove himself. Like you could tell, he's like, yeah, Jimmy's on the roster. Who cares? I'm quarterback one. Jimmy's cool. I'm gonna ask him some questions if I need to. That's my dog. It's my big bro. But now I gotta show big bro that I'm better than him, and I gotta do what I gotta do. So regardless if Jimmy is there or not, Trey's got to go out there and perform for everybody. He's got to go out there and grind it out. He's got to go out there and win the games. He's got to go out there and score touchdowns. He's got to go out there and make the passes. It doesn't matter if Jimmy's there. It doesn't matter if he's not. I love Trey Lance. Good mindset. And again, he's 22. He even said in his press conference, I was laughing. He goes, I'm 22 years old. He goes, and he was talking about Brock Purdy, how he's, using Jimmy as a mentor as well. And he goes, I'm a little upset. Brock Purdy's actually older than me. Dude, Trey Lance is the youngest quarterback in our quarterback room. Like, we have a rookie, Brock Purdy, and he's older than Trey Lance, man. And he's handling himself so well. He's so confident. He's smiling. You got to love this guy, What's up, everybody? How we doing? Drop a like button. What's up, Maxim? What's up, Niner by Nature? Sack that like button. What's up, Senior Hyphy? He says, how can you not love Jimmy Garoppolo? I'm a Jimmy fan and excited for Trey. You know what? At the end of the day, Jimmy's a class act. We can hate him for whatever reasons. I know a lot of people don't like him, but at the end of the day, man, he's done nothing bad to this roster. He's done nothing bad to this team. He's a nice dude. He's a nice guy. He's a class act, and he's coming in, and he's just going to be there to help out. And if worst case scenario, he has to play, he's got incentives, and he's got to earn more. Like, if he wants more money, go out there and win us some damn games. You know what I mean? Maxim, it says, media is going to make it such a big deal. Watch one bad game from Lance, and there's going to be so much drama. Yeah, and that's what we've been talking about is, the media is going to stir the pot. They're going to be out there. They're going to sit there and make everybody, uncomfortable and make it an awkward situation. But the Niners aren't. The team, the quarterbacks, Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, they're not. And as long as they're not worried about it, then we're all good, man. Niner by Nature says, I don't give up about Jimmy coming back. Sir Lance, king of the NFC. Yeah, and Trey Lance doesn't give up about Jimmy Garoppolo coming back. And that's what we're learning. Trey is cool with Jimmy because they're boys, but he doesn't care. He's not coming for his job. Trey knows that. This is Trey's team, and this is his time to shine. And Jimmy's there because he's, the mentor, and they couldn't get rid of him, at the end of the day. So, yeah, the media loves to create chaos. Trey Lance is definitely confident. The only people making this as an issue is the media. Riley, appreciate you. I'm closing in, Niner by Nature. So, Trey Lance, again, I got no issues. He's cool with it. I'm cool with it. Everybody should be cool with it at this point. So, Trey Lance, again, he signs off. He's happy. And you got both quarterbacks out there in practice. And then Jimmy Garoppolo talked to the media today. He said a lot. He said quite a bit. He says, at the end of the day, I'm a 49er right now, and I'm happy about that. That's what Jimmy Garoppolo says. He goes, it definitely was a tough process. He explained the shoulder surgery. He explained the whole 9 yards. So, but one of the first things he said, he goes, it wasn't on my mind, to be completely honest. Things kind of fell into place these last few days. So he didn't know he was going to stay with the team. Like, it was a lot of things going on this offseason. He says that he thought about asking for his release. He actually at one point got to that point where he was going to ask for his release, but then he decided against it. He wanted to return. Once they had these conversations, he started realizing, like, you know what, this is probably best for me. He says there was a lot of discussions with other teams, and then he says, he said a lot. He says there was discussions with other teams, and the fact that, his shoulder was at a certain point, like he was going through rehab, but it wasn't working right. So he had to go and get the surgery. So I like how he explained it, to everybody, because he's been getting a lot of hate about it, throughout the offseason. So this is what he says. He says, the thumb took care of itself. He says, I don't really like to have surgery if I don't have to. And that was something he tried to avoid. He tried to take the conservative route. And, right, nobody wants to get surgery, right? So he says after about 3 to 4 weeks of rehab, he realized it wasn't working. So after a couple weeks of that conservative management, it just wasn't going right. So he had to get that extra opinion, and he went and got the surgery. So that's kind of, I guess, why it was a later surgery, because he was trying to avoid the surgery. He didn't. Nobody wants to go under the knife, and I kind of see where he's coming from on that aspect. So after about 3 to 4 weeks of rehab, he had to go in there and say, "Screw it, we got to do the surgery." And I'm sure you go in one day to surgery. It's not like, oh yeah, let's do surgery the next day. You got to schedule it out. You got to get your pre-op, all that good stuff. So, so it's just one of those things where he had to go through all the motions. He had to make sure he thought about his best case, because they even asked him. They said, were your decisions not just impacting this year? He says, yeah, my decisions made an impact on the future, right? On the future of my career. You still have to think about next year, maybe getting a contract in the future with another team. So there's so much he had to consider. I'm sure it was a very difficult time with everything. It was a lot to process, I'm sure, for Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think this whole process worked itself out in the right way. Again, it was a long, drawn out process. He did talk about having other suitors, right? Like he said, there was other teams. He says, seeing the other opportunities that were out there, you got to weigh the pros and the cons of everything. He goes, trust me, there was a lot of back and forth going on with other teams, and what I wanted my future to look like, this is what I wanted. So again, he talked to other teams. Other teams were looking at him. He had to weigh everything out, and honestly, this was a dub for Jimmy, because if they would have cut him, I don't know if anybody would have signed him after the shoulder surgery. And he knows he can play with the Niners and win games. And, he took a pay cut to stay. And if if he has to play games, he's got incentives in his contract where he can win games and make more money. So it's a win-win for both sides, right? If the Niners have to play Jimmy because of an injury, then he comes in and we can win. And if he wants more money than $6.5 million, which is not a bad, little bag, he can get more money by winning games, and those are the incentives in his contract. So we win games, we're happy. Jimmy Garoppolo wins games, he's happy because he's making more money, right? So it's definitely a crazy situation. It's not a normal situation, but it's something that I think ended up being the right situation. I mean, again, it was a weird situation. And then they asked him a couple other things, and these were some things I really kind of took home on this press conference with Jimmy. He pretty much kept it 100. So he said a couple things. So they asked him about him and Trey. Did you talk to Trey? He goes, look, me and Trey, honestly, I know a lot of gets made up in the media. He says a lot of shit gets made up in the media. He came for the media. He says, look, but we have a strong relationship. Him and Trey are boys, man. They ain't trying to cause any rift with everybody. The media is going to keep on trying to pull them apart. Just like Trey Lance said, he goes, me and Jimmy are boys. And Jimmy Guap said the same thing. He says, me and Trey, honestly, I know a lot of gets made up in the media, but we have a strong relationship. They're boys. And then they asked them, they said, okay, so how do you feel about being the backup quarterback? Is that tough for you? Like, don't you want to come out and start? And this right here, shit, man, I got respect for this answer. He says, look, this is Jimmy Garoppolo on being the backup quarterback to Trey Lance. This is how he handles it. So he says, if that's going to take a blow to your ego, you got to check your ego a little bit. You got to know who you are in this league. Shit, man, he kept it 100 on that. Like, yeah, you know what? Know your role. He knows he's the backup right now. And if that makes you feel a certain type of way, then you know what? You're not man enough to be who you are. Like, you got to humble yourself in this league and realize every player in this league wants to be a starter, wants to be a superstar in this league. But you know what? Jimmy went through an injury. They had Trey Lance. He's the backup. And Trey Lance sat very quietly, and he did his due diligence. He soaked everything up like a sponge, and he didn't try to take, any shine away from Jimmy. And now Jimmy knows he went and had shoulder surgery this offseason. He couldn't get, traded from this team. And here we go. Trey Lance is the star now. The quarterback won. They gave him the baton. They passed the baton to him. And you know what? Jimmy's like, you know what? This is the backup. I'm the backup. This is my role. Just like Trey Lance accepted his role. And Jimmy's going to sit back and support Trey Lance. And that's what they do. They support each other, man. And that is what I love about this whole situation is again, when I first saw this news, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is going to be tough for Trey. Nah, man, these two guys are both very strong minded. And if anything, these are the only two guys I could see this, you know, going well with. Like these guys are both so mentally strong that it's incredible that these are the guys that again they can handle it. I don't know if a lot of other teams would be able to handle this. A lot of other players. So if you don't, you end up looking like a fool like Russell Wilson. Man, Russell Wilson got paid a lot of money. I don't even think the Broncos are going to be the best team in the AFC West. But that's a whole nother story for another day. Workaholic says a lot of fans think that this quarterback situation is going to be controversy and being drama, but I believe is a great move. Yeah, you know what? Fans are going to be dramatic because they're dramatic. They think with their emotions. They have their emotions on their sleeves. So yeah, fans are going to sit there because they play favorites and they get mad and they get upset and they cry. But you know what? The team is strong. They don't care what other people say. There was one thing that Trey Lance said. He goes, "Look, I don't care what people are saying outside in the media." He goes, "I don't care what is being said outside this building." He goes, "I know where we lie." And that's what it's all about. That they know where they lie. They know they have good, strong bonds. They know that this locker room is unbreakable. And if anybody feels a certain type of way, they don't understand the relationship of this locker room. This team is a bunch of dogs, man, and it's a you it's one of those mentalities where it's a family, right? Family first, right? This is a family, and they don't care about being great themselves. Like they always try to hype up their teammates. I think Richard Sherman on his Richard Sherman podcast, he was saying that he goes, "Look, it's not about me or myself or I. It's about who can we put ahead of myself and lift everybody else up." They try to bring the whole squad up. It's not just one guy. It's not just I, me, it's you, it's you, it's you. It's a collection of players. It's a band of brothers. It's 53 players on the initial roster. 53 players on the active roster. Every single player matters. Those practice squad guys, those 16 players on the practice squad, they matter. Every player matters because if someone gets hurt, somebody's coming in to play and they got to step up and play good. So you're going to make sure you support them. It doesn't matter who's the superstar. It doesn't matter who's the Pro Bowl. It doesn't matter who the All Pro is because at the end of the day, it's a collection of guys and it's a team to get to the ultimate goal, the Super Bowl, the championship. You need to go to the championship and win that damn thing. It doesn't matter who's on your team as a superstar or a starter because at the end of the day, if you go to the Super Bowl and you win a championship, you get a ring just like the starters. And if you're a backup. So it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. A group of 53 men trying to fight and claw their way for a championship. So I love the mentality of this locker room. So the Ramilia report says, "Do you still trust Kyle Shanahan after all the constant drama and turmoil?" I mean, this is the thing. Everybody says there's drama and turmoil. They just do things a certain way. I mean, it's exhausting being a 49er fan, sometimes covering it and all the, the craziness on 49ers Twitter. But if you really look at it, they've been to 2 NFC championship games, a Super Bowl under Kyle Shanahan. They completely reworked the roster, right? This team was bad when Kyle Shanahan took over. I'm not even gonna lie. Like this roster, oh man, if you go back and look at some of the names on this roster, Lewis Murphy was wide receiver one. Like they came in and they've added an abundant amount of talent with Shanahan and Lynch. Obviously, there's been a lot of misses, and we'll talk about some of them today. Trey Sermon being a very glaring recent miss, but they're not going to hit on everything. Nobody's perfect. But at the end of the day, man, I trust this squad. I trust Kyle Shanahan. I know he's not perfect. I know he's made a lot of mistakes, and he hasn't been able to get over the hump to win the big one. But I mean, he's done very good for himself, considering all the, adversity this team's had to fight through, all the injuries. He's had a lot of, uh, you know, bad stuff going on through his tenure. A lot of injuries. The deck was stacked against him many times, and Nick Bosa injury, the Jimmy Garoppolo his first year when he came over and it was the star QB1 after that big contract. He goes and tears his ACL. Like had a lot of crap go down. Debo got hurt. Like just Kittle got hurt one year. It's just been a multitude of factors of issues, but they've still made it to 2 NFC championships. Like last year, they were 3-5. How the hell did they make it to the NFC championship? they rallied, man, and they've put together a strong group, great young talent, a great core nucleus. 7 players in the NFL top 100. So, yeah, Shanahan's not perfect. He's got to get over the hump. Um, he can't get. He gets to that big moment and he kind of falters. But there's been a lot of coaches that done that. I've used Andy Reid as an example. This man got to the top of the mountain so many times, but he couldn't finish the job. And now everybody loves Andy Reid. I think once Kyle Shanahan finishes the job, and I know he will eventually, everybody's gonna praise him. He's a good offensive mind. He just got to close the. He just has to be a little bit more aggressive, put the foot on the pedal, and never let up. Don't ease up, and make some better decisions here and there. But I think he's on his way eventually. Definitely good questions. On my show, consider Kyle incompetent. Yeah, a lot of people do. A guy who's 39-42 as a Niner head coach, 8-27 without Jimmy. But that's the thing. That's why they kept Jimmy, because they always had bad injuries. You got to have the context to it. So, yeah, okay, Kyle Shanahan doesn't win without Jimmy, obviously. But they've had C.J. Beathard, Brian Hoyer, Nick Mullins. You're not going to be knocking on the door for those guys. So you have to put context to it. They've also had a multitude of other injuries, right? Nick Bosa was hurt one year. They've had a massive amount of injuries. So you could sit here and say that, yeah, he's not the guy, but 2 NFC championships, they've been to a Super Bowl. Again, it's just all about how you read the context. Context matters in this situation. So I think he's better than some of the guys that were there before him. Obviously, Jim Tomsula and, Jim Tomsula was not the guy. He was a scapegoat, and then Chip Kelly, that was a horrible hire, but they screwed themselves after the fallout of, Jim Harbaugh and Trent Baalke's situation. That's a whole nother story for another day. But Kyle Shanahan took a roster that was left for dead. They were just an abysmal franchise. And he had to really kind of come in and repatch a lot of issues. He brought in a lot of free agents. I remember Kyle Juszczyk and many, many, many others through the years. They brought in Richard Sherman, helped change the culture. They've done a lot of good things, and it takes a long time to rebuild a franchise. They were a bad, left for dead, gutted franchise. And Kyle helped with John Lynch. Of course, they're not perfect. They've made a lot of mistakes here and there, but they've definitely come a long way. So, Harris Sahab says Purdy is solid. He's an experienced college QB. He definitely looked pretty solid. I like that they kept Purdy. Shout out to Brock Purdy for making this roster. He would have been QB2 had they not, messed around and figured something out with Jimmy Garoppolo. So shout out to him. But one guy that didn't make this roster, let's get to this, was Trey Sermon. So Trey Sermon today did not make the roster today. He didn't clear waivers. They did say this morning that Jordan Mason basically was the reason that he ascended to the top. Jordan Mason ascended to the top, and that's the reason why Trey Sermon was let go, because he just didn't pass up on the roster, the depth chart. So you have Jordan Mason, an undrafted guy who worked harder than almost anybody on this roster. He came in, and you couldn't deny him. So Trey Sermon being waived today or yesterday, and then basically that tells me that he was probably the last guy to make the roster, or one of the last few guys to make the roster. He was expendable. They had to bring in the lineman depth, right? Blake Hance, they brought him in, and they needed to cut someone, and Trey Sermon was that someone. And unfortunately, they were hoping for him to clear waivers and maybe get him back to the practice squad and give him a chance. It didn't happen, and I don't think they're going to lose sleep. They got the quarterbacks that they want on this roster. And one thing that they said, so let me bring up some of these quotes. I want to pull up some of these quotes because these were juicy today. So Lynch basically on the Sermon cut, he says, Jordan Mason just played too well, and we feel he made our team better. Jordan Mason made the team better, not Trey Sermon. He goes hard part of that on Trey, been much chronicled. He goes, he wasn't ready to play the way we needed him last year, and Jordan answered the bell and was ready this year. So Jordan, just ascended to the top. And Trey Sermon, he did play pretty solid in training camp, but he just couldn't put everything on tape in the preseason, and I don't think that he maybe fit the bill. He didn't work hard enough last year, So that kind of tells me he was in the doghouse, something we talked about. And he just didn't do enough this year to pass up Jordan Mason. You couldn't deny Jordan Mason. You know for a fact, if they would have cut him, he would have been a star somewhere else. So I'm glad they kept him. And Jordan Mason was the guy they really just were impressed with this offseason. So he earned it, man. And Trey Sermon, they let him go. And you know the thing with Trey Sermon is he's one of those running backs that just didn't pan out, that was drafted early by Kyle. And Joe Williams is the other most notable guy. They gave Joe Williams a lot of chances, and I thought they were going to give Trey Sermon a lot of chances. But you know what? You got to give Kyle a lot of credit for this one because he says, you know what, screw it, I'm going to move on. Like, he took his L like a big boy. He put his big boy pants on this one because usually Kyle, he usually is very indecisive. He's usually very forgiving, and he always gives people second chances. He's done it with Jalen Hurd, Jerick McKinnon, and several other players. Like I said, Joe Williams. He says, nah, man, if you're not good enough to make this roster, I'm going to cut your ass. And that's what he did. It was definitely a shocking turn of events yesterday when we discussed it. But Kyle Shanahan he didn't hold back, and he did what he had to do. And he got claimed by the Eagles. So this was interesting. They did talk about, so Adam Schefter reported that the Eagles claimed Trey Sermon, right? He didn't clear waivers. They claimed him. He mentioned this. Let me pull up this. So Trey Sermon was claimed by the Eagles. Obviously, we just said that. But this is what Adam Schefter said. I want to pull up this tweet. He goes, the Eagles and the 49ers discussed a trade for Trey Sermon last week. The Niners were going to trade Trey Sermon. Somehow, they didn't make the trade. And the Eagles basically claimed him on waivers without giving anything up. So I don't know how I feel about that. I guess they didn't get enough from the Eagles. Like, they weren't going to get anything that they thought was significant value. So they're like, nah, we'll keep him. And then they just traded him, or they just cut him, and then the Eagles get him for nothing. I mean, I would have at least traded him for something. Maybe get like a fifth round pick. The Niners are great at those. So kind of weird. The Eagles ended up getting the guy they were going to trade for a week ago for not giving anything up. So, it is what it is. And the Eagles didn't have to give anybody up because they released Jalen Reagor yesterday. So that gives them a free roster spot. So, I don't know, a little weird. Marco says they wanted to trade for Jalen Reagor. Oh, I don't know if I would have taken Jalen Reagor. Maybe we could have turned him into something. Two busts, Jalen Reagor and Trey Sermon. Would you do a bust trade? Niners said, nah. Yeah, they probably want to give us Jalen Reagor, and Niners like, oh, Jalen Reagor, give us a 5th round pick instead. So that's funny. I'd rather see Grant coming out of the backfield than Sermon. Oh, man. David Yang, this is a good point. People forget Trey Sermon was complaining last year about carries. He didn't earn it. He really didn't earn anything last year. Preseason, he looked bad. He had an injury in preseason. He just looked bad. That's the word. He just looked bad last year. He didn't earn anything. And then this year, he looked like he was more focused. And they said, he did come in this year. He answered the bell. He looked better. But it still didn't translate to the field. Like, he just didn't get enough good, moments out there. He didn't have a good enough moments for the Niners. And they were not happy with anything that he was able to do. So they released him. He was an expenditure. He was just a casualty. That's unfortunate. It's a business. And, again, they said, yeah, if he clears waivers, we'll pick him back up and put him on the practice squad. But from what it tells me is he's not ready to play on this roster. He was not going to play. Even if he was on the practice squad, they probably would have sat there and developed him. You got to feel bad for Trey Sermon, but he just didn't have what it takes to play for the 49ers secondary. The Niners backfield, the Niners backfield is usually so dynamic, and Trey Sermon just did not fit the bill. So maybe one of those bursts turn him into a gem. You never know. Oh, man. I don't know. I felt bad for the guy, but again, if you're not going to come out there and perform 100%, you're going to complain, and then, it just meant. I think it got to mental. I think it got to Trey Sermon mentally. You know what I mean? Like it was a mental situation for Trey. I think once you get to that point and you're that down and you start complaining and you can't play well in a game, it's in here. And if he would have stayed with the Niners, it never would have gotten better. So ultimately, I think him going to another team is probably what's best for him. He needs a change of pace. He needs a new scenery. Maybe it'll do him well. Maybe a new scenery will do him well. I do not think that he would have had any success with the 49ers. At this point, it was mental, and I don't think it would have helped him at all to stay with the Niners. I just think he was in his head too much. So he gone. He gone. There was a couple more interesting things that John Lynch and Adam Peters said. They said there is a lot of great little quotes. So let's get to some of what else they said. So we did talk about Trey Sermon. He'd mentioned more on Jordan Mason. He goes that Jordan Mason runs in our style, and we couldn't deny he earned a spot on our roster. So again, talking about how Jordan Mason runs in our style. So that tells me right there, right then and there, Jordan Mason fits the scheme of the Niners, and Trey Sermon doesn't. Just like we've been speculating through the last couple weeks, is Trey Sermon just does not fit the scheme. He wasn't a scheme fit, and they realized it, and they cut their losses with them. So Jordan Mason, man, shout out to this guy, undrafted player, and he skyrocketed, man. You got to give Jordan Mason all the credit in the world, you know. So he did. John Lynch did mention about Hans, the offensive lineman that they signed. He's specifically there as a backup and specifically at center in case Brunskill's hamstring doesn't allow him to suit up week 1, presumably behind projected starter Jake Brendel. And then they said Nick Zakelj is also being groomed as a backup center. So interesting enough, the guy that they brought in yesterday, Blake Hance, he is being developed into a backup center role for the Niners because, Brunskill's dealing with the hamstring injury. They do expect him hopefully to be back by week 1. Not 100% sure. So Dan Brunskill maybe will be back by week 1. But this guy they brought in, Hance, can play backup center. So if there's any issues with Jake Brendel, they got a guy that can play along the line. He's versatile. He can play guard and center. So John Lynch talked about Brock Purdy. He says Brock Purdy came in from day 1 and showed a grasp of our offense. He says it wasn't too big. This is a guy who's played a lot of football. I think someone else mentioned in the comments that he's played, the 4 seasons in college. He's a veteran, college quarterback, so he's seasoned. This is a guy who's played a lot of football. He says, his presence, just a lot to like. He just earned that spot. We like that QB room. So, yeah, shout out to Brock Purdy. He put in the work, man. He put in the work, and he really, really earned that spot. So, again, I think he came in confident to camp. And I know he's a rookie, but he's not a young rookie, right? Trey Lance is 22. That's what we got to realize. He didn't play a lot of college football, and Brock Purdy played a lot of college football, and I think that is what helped him along this route. Is he played a lot of football. He's very confident, and I think that again spoke volumes of him, and they needed him to stay on the roster. No disrespect to Nate Sudfeld, but I think Purdy outplayed him. Purdy was hungry, and he just wanted it more. He wanted to stick to this roster. He's young, and he showed that he has talent and potential, and they can, continue to develop him. And Nate Sudfeld, he landed on his feet. He went to the Lions. I'm happy for Nate. I think he deserved another job, another chance somewhere else. So it was a win-win. So a couple more things from John Lynch this morning. He goes on Jimmy Garoppolo trade talks. He goes, during the combine, there was really serious talks, probably 2 to 3 teams that I felt this was going to happen. Then when the news broke of the shoulder surgery, things went the way they went. I'm glad we arrived at where we're at. We're happy he's here. So kind of the timeline, and John Lynch has talked about this before. They said they were ready to trade him. I remember that combine. They were like, yeah, we got a lot of teams on the phone. And then the next day they announced the shoulder surgery, and that was when it fell apart. Then the next week they interviewed Lynch, and he was just like, yeah, it's a work in progress. And I think that's when it fell. The shoulder surgery threw everything up. Threw a wrench in everything. We talked about that many times. And then the other issue was when, like Jimmy was saying, that he had teams that were calling him and telling him, hey, let's make a trade. But then, unfortunately for him, he had the shoulder surgery. He tried to avoid it. he went, the conservative route. But looking back at everything, looking at the timeline, looking at hindsight and everything, he probably should have just went in and got the surgery to begin with. Right after the season, he should have got it. I think we talked about this on the quad box that we both said, Smitty, myself, I think Vlad, C-Mag, we all said that I think he should have just went and got the surgery. But again, I get it. He's trying to go down the conservative route. You always try to avoid surgery if you can. But I think at that point, it was something where he should have just went and done it and, bit the bullet, because I think he would have bought a little bit more time and it would have been easier to make a trade. But hey, at the end of the day, they did end up in a good situation. So you can't hate it. You can't fault it. So. Debbie says, but with the Lions, Sudfeld is unlucky. I don't know. I think the Lions are a young, up-and-coming team. I like them. I think they have some nice young players on the team. They got a good culture. I like Dan Campbell, head coach. He's changing the culture over there. And you know what? Nate Sudfeld might get a chance to start this season. I don't know if Jared Goff is going to last all year. So if Nate Sudfeld gets his opportunity, I hope he rises to the occasion. So. The Lions. There's some new numbers. Let's talk about some of the new numbers. I don't know if you guys saw this, but 49ers over the cap tweeted this yesterday, and it was confirmed today. Cam Inman talked about it a little bit too. There's some new numbers, so let's get to it. I don't know what you guys think about it. I like the new numbers. So Charvarius Ward, he changed his number from 35 to number 7. He's rocking the number 7, the Kaepernick special. There's only, Nate Sudfeld wore the 7, and now Charvarius Ward wears the 7. Danny Gray, he went from 86 to 6, a single-digit number for a wide receiver. It's pretty sweet. I don't know. I kind of like the 86. I was partial to it. A lot of people didn't like the 86. I like it. I like the 86. Tyler Kroft, this man was wearing number 47. He went from 47 to 81. I mean, I don't think he's the guy that should be wearing 81, but 81's a lot better than 47. Brock Purdy, he went from 14 to 13. And Jordan Mason, he went from 41 to 24. I saw somewhere posted, I don't know if it's official. Let me pull this up. I think the 49er Web Zone might have tweeted this out earlier. And it was via Cam Inman. But I think that Talanoa Hufanga is going to be wearing number 30 this year. That's what I heard. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, Talanoa Hufanga should be wearing number 30. He's not number 29 anymore, from what I understand. And we got a little bit of a news update. Tanner Hudson has just got signed by the Giants. They signed 49ers former tight end Tanner Hudson. Earlier today, Segun Olubi, the linebacker, I don't know if you guys remember him. He was the undrafted linebacker. But Segun Olubi was signed by the Colts. If you go to his Instagram story, there's a picture of him in the Colts, facility. So Segun Olubi signed with the Colts, and Tanner Hudson signed with the Giants. Breaking news! Harris says he really liked 35-2. It suited him. I like the 35-2 on Charvarius Ward. I was digging the 35, but I'm not going to lie. I kind of like the number 7. I do like it. It's a little different. But, all our secondary players, except Sam Womack, our starting secondary, Sam Womack's starting corner, starting nickel. Jimmy Ward, single digit. You got my man, Emmanuel Mosley, single digit. And now Charvarius Ward, single digit. So they're changing the game, lockdown 24/7, But they're definitely changing. Oh, and Jason Verrett, single digit, number 2. So I kind of like it. It's pretty cool to see a single digit number out there, but it is definitely a big change, because I kind of did like that number 35. Number 35 was cool. I liked it. Senior Hyphy says, who was the last player we released that excelled on another team? It's a good question. Can anybody think of a player that's really shined somewhere else? I think Matt Breida did, pretty good. I mean, he wasn't like a superstar. He played okay. Let's see. Let's think about that. Who is a player that the Niners released, signed somewhere else, and was really good? That's a good question. Who Let's see. Let's think about it. It's a good question. Solomon Thomas, he didn't excel, but he had a decent season last year, I guess. As a Raider, he played better than I thought. DJ Reed. Oh, that's it. Yeah, these are the ones right here. DJ Reed was a baller with the Seahawks. Oh, this is a good one. Akello Witherspoon, man. Let's put some respect on Akello Witherspoon. This guy balled out with the Steelers. He was one of the best cornerbacks in the league, man. I'm not even gonna lie, man. Akello Witherspoon got a bad rap with the Niners. A little inconsistent. He had a lot of hamstring issues, and it stunted his development here. And I don't know if the coaches 100% supported the guy. There's some political stuff that went behind the scenes. I talked to Akello's dad. He gave me the lowdown. Akello, man, he had the talent. I don't know if they really harnessed him right or gave him the opportunities. Man, Akello Witherspoon had a hell of a year with the Steelers last year. I agree with that. Yeah. Akello is Pittsburgh's #1 corner. You're absolutely right. DeForest Buckner, of course. DeForest Buckner. Guy's a stud, a legend. He left and he hasn't missed a beat. DeForest Buckner, pulse of that Colts defense. Dante Pettis. Come on now. He hasn't had a standout career. He's on the Bears, though. Did he make the final I need to know, did Dante Pettis make the final roster for the Bears? Dante Pettis. Oh, my God. I hope he made the final roster. Did Dante Pettis make the final roster for the Bears? Can someone tell me? Because I want Emmanuel Mosley and Charvarius Ward to lock him. Oh, he did. Mark says that Dante Pettis made the 53-man roster for the Chicago Bears. The week 1, baby, revenge game. Revenge game for Dante Pettis. I can't wait for Charvarius Ward to intercept a pass intended for that man. It's going to be nice. It's going to be nice. We'll see him in 10 days. I can't wait. Let's lock him up. I hope we make that cat boy cry. DJ Molly says DJ Jones. Yeah, he'll probably have an exception. We haven't seen DJ Jones play since he left the Niners, though. K'Wan Williams, Laken Tomlinson, DJ Jones, all these guys left this offseason. We'll see how they do without the Niners. But players that have done really good, DeForest Buckner for sure. Akello Witherspoon, pretty good. DJ Reed, I like that one. DJ Reed, man, he's been a beast on the Seahawks. Man, I wish we never let that guy go, but he got hurt. I understand it. So. All right, that's it for now. I gotta go. I gotta go take care of some errands, and then we'll be back a little later. Appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your day. Busy. It's been a busy week. It's been fun. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And Sad Niner fan wants you to know before we leave that Dante Pettis is softer than Charmin. You know what? This man blocked me on Instagram. Let's talk about Dante Pettis real quick. This man, we're gonna talk a lot about Dante Pettis in the next couple weeks because we got a game against the Bears in the next week, maybe not weeks. So Dante Pettis, he blocked me on Instagram one year. I remember. He used to follow me. I don't know. He used to like my posts. It was cool. And then one day he got blocked. I got blocked. What the hell, Dante Pettis? I didn't say anything bad about it. I actually was a Dante Pettis supporter. I was always talking nice about Dante Pettis. I never talked bad about him. I never said anything bad. So the problem was people would tag him in my post, and my posts blow up pretty big. They would tag him in the post. They would, say some nasty stuff and tag him on the post. So I think he got tired of it. He blocked me. Okay? So he blocked me. My buddy that knows the team and he knows the players, they were at a party out in Vegas one day, and I think Dante was there. He was there. He was with the wide receivers and stuff. This was a couple years back. So I tell my boy Moose, I go, yo, Dante's there? He goes, yeah. And he was telling me all the stories. I go, yo, tell Dante Pettis to unblock me from Instagram. He goes, he blocked you? I was like, yeah, tell him why he blocked me. So he's like, all right, I'll tell him. The next morning I wake up and I'm unblocked from Dante Pettis. Cool, right? Great. I'm unblocked. So I was like, okay, my boy got the job done. A couple weeks later, Dante Pettis gets cut from the 49ers. Breaking news post. We make the post. About an hour later, I'm blocked from Dante Pettis. He's never to be seen again. He blocked me. He made it a priority to block my page after he got cut from the 49ers. Come on, man. Come on, man. And I was nothing but support. Let's go see if I can pull up Pettis. Yeah, they don't exist. D Maney, I can't find his page. Blocked. Unbelievable. So that is my story of Dante Pettis blocking me on Instagram. I can't believe he blocked me. This man celebrates by licking his hand like it's a paw, like a cat. How do you celebrate? But that's it. I can't say anything bad about Pettis. That's it. I hope we clamp him up in 10 days. You guys have a good rest of your day.